Welcome back to the channel. I want to show you guys the split tone plugin that's available in the 20.1 Resolve update. If you're not familiar with split toning, it's basically splitting complementary colors. I want to show you what the plugin does before we look at some shots. We're looking at a grayscale here, which is essentially pure black with a ramp up to pure white. Now, these are also referred to as neutrals because there's no colors in them. So I'll show you a little something about that as we look at the plugin. So if I turn this node on and enable the split tone, right now it's just default settings. If we look at the little change or skewing in our lines here, I'll turn that on and off. We're starting to get an influence of color here. Right here, we're getting a little bit of like grayish, greenish blue, and a little bit of a change here. So if we shut that plugin on and off, you can see that being introduced here. Now there's a strength, a pivot, and a hue angle, and the reason I opened it up in here is so you could kind of see what it's doing without looking at an image, because sometimes it could be overwhelming if you have a lot of different colors going on. So let's move the strength down and the pivot, and I'll pull the hue angle down too. If I start increasing the strength, you can see as it gets wider. If we're looking at our RGB scope, you can see this one's really getting affected in the blue channel. Now if we start pivoting that, it's going to change where it starts and stops. So you can look at the scope here, and we're going from more of the high, pulling in from the darkest part of the image, and it's gradually affecting higher up here. Now if we change the hue angle, that's going to change our RGB to are we more red, are we more green, are we more blue. And then if I hit protect neutrals, it pretty much goes back to normal because there's not any color value here. Now there's a spot in here called color space override, so you're aware. You can alter your input color space, gamma, and output, and even change your white point level. So if you're working in another range, right now I'm in a color managed 709, but if you need to go in and out of like wide gamut or intermediate or something like that, or log, you can do all that here by using whatever camera file you need, and then you can change it here. And so you can actually bypass your system's color if you're looking to use it that way. Now this is natural. We have a strong version, which is pretty much all the same controls. It's just cranked up a little bit more by default. And then we have custom, which gives us control over the pivot point, independent shadow and highlight, and neutral controls. So let's look at this, comparing it to some shots here. Here's a shot where I don't have split toning on, but this is what they did in this particular example. We have these nice teal colors up in the sky and the complementary color of the orange on the dirt. Same here with this shot from John Wick. We've got some teals in the shadows and just some brighter reds, and they kind of follow that throughout the movies. Here we go, also with some cool shadows and some teal. Same thing here. Now here's a shot from the movie Seven, and I just wanted to show you what the plugin does as we look at it like in a real world example. Here's what it looks like without the split toning on, and here's with split toning enabled. So if we go default, it's more of a gray, dreary, kind of ominous look, and we've added a lot of green into here in this particular example. So how you can look at what you're actually doing to the image other than looking at what is going on in your scopes here, we have a checkbox called preview influence. And with that highlighted, you can see we're getting, essentially being told we're going to get all this green down here. So if we turn that on and off, you can see that's exactly the change that we're getting on all these surfaces. Anything that's highlighted is a neutral that isn't going to be affected. And if I turn on protect neutrals, you can see it's seeing most of it as a neutral because it's leaning more towards gray. Now, while you have preview influence on, you can adjust the strength, and that's reflected. You can adjust the pivot point. So if you're looking to maybe go a little bit cooler, now you can see we've got more of a cool tone going on. And then we have hue angle, So if we're looking to just adjust it to a certain hue, you have all these options in here with these sliders. So you could use preview influence to see how you're actually manipulating the image based on your strength, based on your pivot of what colors you're trying to pull together, and your hue angle. And then we have the custom version. So now we could just start looking at shadows only, which this probably isn't the best shot for that, since it's mostly highlights, as you can see here. And then with protect neutrals, you have a minimum and max saturation setting, so you can really fine tune where the roll-offs are going to occur as you're starting to adjust your image. So you can really change the look and feel of a shot with complementary colors with the split tone effect. Now here is our last example I'll walk you through. I have a few nodes on here, and I'm going to show you one other way to do it if you don't have the studio version. So I'm going to shut these first two nodes off and just show you what we're doing on our base node here. Here's our before, and here's our after with our base node. And if we keep an eye on our scopes here, you can see I'm just bringing it down to a decent base level with where the blacks are sitting, and balancing our RGB because we're kind of out of skew on here. So that's pretty much getting us in a good starting point. So that's why it's labeled base. I enabled the split toning on the second node here. If we turn that on and off, you can see we're really getting a lot of those complementary colors coming into play. More of the warmth on the red and the teal in the background. So let's look at that node a little bit more. I'll lower my scopes down. I'm on natural, and I have our strength about halfway. If we click on the preview influence, you can see that's exactly what we're getting here with the brick wall, the highlights in her face and hair, and some of the tones taking over in the wall and the chair. I do have protect neutrals on, so let's take a look at what her shirt looks like with the node on, and when we click this on and off. And also pay attention to the black spaces between the radiator, the wall, and his shoulder here. So if I turn it off, we're getting that light cast, more of the reddish color onto her shirt, and we get a lot on her shoulder here too, but a lot on her face actually comes through. And now if we look at the black levels, this actually cleans it up when we hit protect neutrals. So anything that's in that gray to white space that I showed you on the graph earlier, you can think of that as getting left alone. And if we hit preview influence and turn our protect neutrals on and off, this really showcases it quite a bit more. So you can see all over her shirt. It almost is like a white balance for her shirt. And it is a little more subtle to see the black change on here, but if you look for it, you can see it. So I'll shut preview influence off, and that's pretty much what I did on that node to get these complementary colors to come in. And then I have a third node titled high, and I just brought down some of the highlights and contrast a little bit on here. If you float over your nodes, it'll actually tell you what's going on each node. So maybe if you're taking over a session, or you just want to see what is going on in case you forgot. So this one has primary balance, saturation, hue and luma mix, log grade, custom curves, a little bit of soft clipping, and HDR. With the custom curve here, you can actually break apart. Normally they're all linked together, and you just pull everything down in combination. If you hit this little chain, you can unlink them. So as you can see, I took our Y luminance channel and brought down the highlights just a bit here. And then on our red channel, I brought that down a hair on top, made an anchor point, and just pulled down this middle point. As you can see here, it just gets rid of some of the overwhelming red in the shot and lets that teal and blue pop through. Then I left the green and the blue alone. And then if you aren't aware, we do have this HDR palette. You might think that's just for high dynamic range footage, but you can use it. It's pretty granular. Zone in on exactly what you're looking for. So here, if I move shadows, you can see it really changes it quite a bit. So don't be afraid to use the HDR section even if you're not working in HDR. Now for highlight here, there's also saturation. So mess around with this and see what you can do with it. But essentially the shadow, the light, and the highlight will be the ones that you'll use, and then you do have a global adjustment. So that's about it. Now this last one is the no plugin version, so I'll get rid of these 2. So we're starting off with just this base RGB balance. This is just an empty node. I'm going to plug it into our pipeline and turn it on. And what I'm going to do is go to our custom curves, and I'm going to go over here to our sat versus sat. Now with this, you can move over to your image and get an eyedrop, and it will choose that area. So you can see now we have a little dot here. If I was to start moving that around, it's going to start saturating it. So I can actually make it like a safe point here and grab this. Now you can see we're just manipulating that background color, saturating it a bit more. And then we could go back to our logs and maybe adjust the gain, because we're just going there. And now if we wanted to maybe get a highlight from her skin, we can still stay in here, and then that'll make a new point. Maybe I'll go here. So let me re-click down here, and we got a point right here. So now that's saying here's that. You can see the warmth coming in as we adjust the saturation level of that. And if we grabbed this and maybe eased it a little more, so we can click on a point and delete it, or right click it, and then kind of mess with our saturation, and then go back to our curves. We can link our chain again if we wanted, or just grab our whites or luminance channel. So this is kind of like we're trying to duplicate what was going on. So I'll probably grab the red again, make a couple safe points. That way nothing below these 2 dots will get adjusted. I'm going to grab here and just kind of pull some of the red. Now you can see it does behave quite a bit differently than the split tone, but we're getting closer to having that split tone effect right here. So I might pull down the highs a little bit, but you guys get the idea. Oops. Just bring that down. It's a little too contrasty, but now we're getting closer to that split tone kind of look without having the plugin. All right, so that's about it. The split tone plugin is now available as a standalone. It used to be in the film look creator, and you'd have to disable and just use the split tone, and now they made it available where you can just use it standalone, and it's a pretty cool plugin. All right, consider liking and subscribing if you found this video helpful, and leave a comment down below if you guys got a topic you want me to make a video on. And other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.